welcome to my spoon video. We're going to start by cutting out a spoon blank here. I have a template from previous spoons that I've cut, and using the thickness of this salvaged lumber, I'll try and make a relatively square shank. This is a relatively home-built bandsaw that works very well for my wood turning needs. By flipping this piece on its side, I get a relatively square shank, as mentioned before. A mirror image for the spoon, and away we go. A nice aggressive blade makes for fast cuts, because I don't need a superior surface. Now if I use my thumbnail off a pencil, I can get a rough centering mark, so I don't waste too much material when mounting the piece between centers. This spoon nearly maxes out my short bed lathe, but it's just about the right length for a spoon. I'm going to use the roughing gouge here to try and get that tough neck area defined relatively quickly. I like how it can butt into end grain without too much arguing. I don't need to define too much of the upper spoon shape, because that will be done with the bandsaw and sanding later, but this collar area here does well to be defined with the chisel. Stop the lathe and let you see where the cuts are. That's about all that matters as far as the actual body of the spoon portion. A nice 1-inch skew knocks corners off and starts to define the flow of the piece. Kind of fast and loose with the point up near the tip, near the handle of the spoon here. Still just roughing down. With this point down cut, keeping the majority of the cutting action with the bottom 1/8 inch of the skew chisel yields a very nice surface and very little chatter. But putting a hand on the spoon shaft doesn't hurt at all against chatter. Now to define the handle, popping a little bead in here. And some careful point down skew work to keep the piece flowing. gouge comes in and meets my previous cuts. Turns out that this cut has a touch of chatter to it, but it leaves a spiraled surface that I end up really enjoying, and so I leave it. 3 tiny pokes with the skew chisel enable a burnish with a wire. A little sanding. And that should be all that this spoon really needs. You can see that spiraled chatter there now. A nice accidental touch. So now at the bandsaw, I cut the top face off the spoon. It's a relatively thick blank that left me a nice thick handle. Now I'll start to shape the spoon. This is my spoon carving jig with a Lancelot chainsaw bit in my angle grinder. The spoon is mounted with a screw into the excess at the head of the spoon from beneath that you can't see, but it's very important, and a little bit of a clamp around the handle. Don't even think about trying this at home. The angle grinder is mostly stuck in its collar there, but using my thumbs I'm able to inch it back and forth and guide it through this arc carefully. Don't even think about doing this without proper safety glasses on either. For the very last swoop, I won't return the grinder back through. I'll turn it off before sweeping back through. This yields me a much better surface. You can see I inch it back. This ends up yielding a very, very nice smooth spoon surface. Now back over to the bandsaw. I use the oval that's just been defined and try and cut around it. I don't have to be too precise because I'll do the finish work on a belt sander, but making up for any off-centered action can be done most aggressively here. Then a cut off of the back thins the spoon once again. And 3 more cuts to go. Taper for the very point of the spoon. And then this looks more difficult than it really is. Try and follow at a nice angle along the edge of the spoon from both sides. This saves a lot of time in sanding later. On to the sanding. Kind of a rinky-dink method, but it works okay for me. That's a 36 grit paper. I switch to a 120 later and finish up my sanding with a random orbital sander, but let's not watch people sand on YouTube. A little boiled linseed oil will polymerize nicely and protect this spoon against a very tough wet life in the kitchen. I've always enjoyed seeing the oil go onto the wood and seeing what the final surface will look like. And so I'm making you watch it too. That's what a spoon looks like. Thanks for watching.